Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Society of Thoracic Surgeons Congenital Heart Surgery Database User Group call for today, Tuesday, February the 23rd. Just real quick, our welcome and introductions. As usual, I'm going to provide a very brief STS update. IQVIA has a brief update as well, and then we'll turn things over to you all for your questions and feedback. Just a friendly reminder to please submit any of your questions via the Q&A function. This does allow us to track all questions, so it is extremely helpful for us to please put those questions or comments into the Q&A. Also, we do have the raise hand function capability enabled, so obviously if you would like to speak or elaborate on your question, just raise your hand and we can unmute you. Just be sure that your microphone is enabled on your end, and we'll unmute you, and then we can have a discussion. On the call with me today, we got a full house on this end. From the STS side, we have myself. We also have Carol Crone. We have Catherine Holyfield, Addie Dolan. Our core group members, we have Leslie, we have Chastity, and we have Janet. From the IQVIA team, we've got Melanie, Rhonda, Michelle, Joe, Steve, Anna, and I think I saw Jean at some point, and Jean as well. I think she may have dropped off though. So that's all we have from our end. In terms of our STS updates, again, this is the same information that we had last week. Again, obviously, as you all are aware, we just had a call last week. Harvest 2021 schedule again is posted on the website, and again, just to reiterate, the spring 2021 harvest close is to be determined. We have not established a harvest close time. We have, obviously heard from you all and your surgeons that you would like to see the 2020 harvest data back before we close the spring 2021 harvest. So we are working on listening to your wishes, and that 2021 harvest date is to be determined. We don't have a date yet, as we are still working with IQVIA and DCRI to determine exactly when that data will be back to us. So more information will be coming. Obviously, participants will be given a minimum of 2 weeks notice prior to the harvest close date. Obviously, we will give you all as much time as possible. So that information, again, will be coming once we know more from DCRI and IQVIA. And of course, just a reminder that that spring 2021 harvest does include procedure dates up through 12/31/2020. Permanent procedure mismatch report, Melanie and team will have a brief update about that here shortly. And again, just a reminder to look over that report overview prior to looking at that, just to understand the current functionality. CHSD public reporting, as you're all aware, there will be no public reporting of that 2020 data. Dr. Meyer and others have a new working group being convened to plan the future for STS congenital public reporting. So more information on that will be coming soon. We are in the process of the data version upgrade. We are tackling the post-operative section now. Those calls started last evening, and we are continuing to work through the upgrade. Once the post-op complications are done, we'll be bringing that information back to STS task force members, and then we'll continue moving forward with the upgrade. And again, that upgrade is scheduled to go live January 1st, 2022. That's all that I have in regards to STS updates. I'm just going to turn things over to Joe for our IQVIA update. Joe?
Great, thanks, Leanne. Good afternoon, everyone. So some items that are slated for this coming weekend, February 27th, starting with a fix for the missing variable report, STS 5474. The missing variable report is currently showing the prothrombin complex concentrate 3, dose 3 as missing, even though that field is not active on the case form. So we are going to have a fix for that this weekend. And then STS 5484 on the participant dashboard report. The STAT4 filter is currently excluding cases that were assigned to the LV endocardial fibroelastosis resection and the double root translocation. So that will be resolved in this weekend's fix as well. Then some updates for the primary procedure mismatch report, also targeted for the 27th. Starting with STS 4386, the report logic will be updated to include consideration for identified combination codes for primary procedure. And then 4371, we're adding Kawashima procedure to the exception 1 code list for consideration for the report as well. And then 4387, we are also adding logic so that Kawashima procedures are considered primary when coded in conjunction with a Glenn or Hemi-Fontan procedure. STS 4389, report logic will be updated to include a specific rule for 3 identified VSD repairs when selected in combination with a PFO primary closure procedure. And then 4388, the report logic will be updated to include specific hybrid approach codes to the exception rule 1 procedure specific factor lists. And you can see those lists there on the slide. And then finally, we do have one fix for that report as well, STS 5471. The report is currently displaying a mismatch between the TOF repair no ventriculotomy and the RV OT procedure 510. And so that will be resolved with the report enhancements that are coming this weekend.
And there it is.
Yeah, so that should cover it for today. As usual, if you did submit a ticket and we didn't discuss it today and you want more information about the status of that, please reach out to our support team. And then we will be coming up for next presentation. We are compiling a list of new items that will be fixed in a coming release.
Great, thank you so much, Joe.
My pleasure.
All right. And again, like I said, since we just had the call last week, we just had a couple of brief updates from the STS side and IQVIA side. Support plan, you all are very familiar with this information. Again, just our standard plea to please include your participant ID when you do contact STS and IQVIA. A list of resources that are available to you on the STS website, as well as the information for tech support via STS tech support at IQVIA, as well as the phone support line. My contact information, which you all have, again, please feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions, concerns. As I said last week, reach out to me. We can discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, anything, improvements you all would like to see made, things that are working well. Again, please feel free to reach out to me directly. If you'd like to schedule a call, I'm happy to do that as well. Just feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm happy to discuss your questions and concerns with you. So again, please feel free to reach out to me, and then I will bring any and all of your questions and concerns back to Donna and team and STS leadership. So here's my information, and I'm available to you all when you need me. If you have any database operational questions, please feel free to reach out to us at stsdb@sts.org. I know a lot of people are still, we'll request a list of current contacts at your site, since that's not quite yet available on the IQVIA platform. That will be coming soon. It's just not quite available yet. In the meantime, if you do need a list of your current contacts, please feel free to reach out to us at stsdb@sts.org. And also I wanted to bring up to let you all know our upcoming congenital webinars. Our next monthly webinar is scheduled for March the 16th at 12 p.m. Central, and our next user group call is scheduled for March the 23rd at 12 p.m. Central. During the transition, we were having 2 user group calls a month, but we are going to back that down. We're going to have get back to our standard schedule as with the other databases. We're going to have our 1 monthly webinar as well as our 1 user group call. So again, just mark your calendars accordingly. The monthly webinar is for March 16th at 12, and our very next user group call is scheduled for March the 23rd at 12 p.m. Central Time. That's all that I had from the STS and IQVIA side. Again, please feel free to, or please put your questions into the Q&A. This is your opportunity to ask your questions with IQVIA on the line, as well as STS on the line. I do see one question from Marina, so we'll go ahead and tackle that. And also just a reminder that we do have the raise hand function enabled. If you would like to raise your hand, we can unmute you and have that conversation as well. So our first question from Marina, I need some clarification on a funding option in the CHSD. Under Charitable Care Foundation funding, there are two listings, internal and external. Can someone give me an example of each? I don't understand what would determine whether it's internal or external charitable care foundation funding. I don't know if Carol or anyone from the core group could answer that one. To be honest, I do not know the answer to that question.
I would say that this is Carol, and Chastity and Janet can jump. Chastity, Janet, and Leslie can jump in if they'd like. But I would say internal is that the funding is coming from the hospital itself as a charitable write-off, and external would be something, some other outside funding.
Yeah, Carol, this is Leslie. I agree with you. For our particular hospital, it doesn't come up as a form of insurance if it's an internal contribution, but we will see something like Samaritan's Purse is an external charitable company or group, I guess, that pays for some of the surgeries. That appears for us in the medical record, but the internal stuff does not.
And my guess is you probably wouldn't see the internal stuff at the time. It would probably be something that occurs later on unless it's discussed ahead of time and
Right.
Planned and all of that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Marina said they do a lot of kids with the Heart Gift program. Okay. Okay, our next question. This is Chastity, Leslie, Janet, you'll remember this from last week. You're welcome, Marina. Recently listened to the recording last week about pre-op CPAP used at home for sleep apnea. The answer given as the FAQ response is different to what Dr. Jacobs stated. It should be counted versus it should not be counted as a pre-op factor. I just wanted to get clarification on this. Is the FAQ going to be updated, or did I misunderstand this conversation?
This is Chastity. We're going to bring this back up to the core group, realizing that there were discrepant answers. I think we had one surgeon answer it on a call where the other surgeon wasn't present. So we need to have both of them on the call so we can discuss what the intent is of the pre-op factor, and then we'll have a consistent answer and put it in the training manual.
Correct. And unfortunately, neither Dr. Jacobs nor Dr. Meyer are on the call at this time. So, but yes, we'll take that back and discuss that with both of them on our next call. Okay. I'm not seeing any additional questions. Anyone? I don't know if anyone, oh, Kelly. Okay, Kelly, I'm gonna unmute you. Kelly, I think you're alive now.
Hi, this question is actually for Carol. On the last call, it was mentioned that centers were submitting their files with errors in them and had been instructed to clean those errors up, but had chosen not to clean those errors up. One of my concerns is with the platform, has anybody explored whether centers actually chose not to clean those up, or if it's actually a usability issue with the interface being a new platform?
So we thank you for the question, Kelly. So IQVIA has done a lot of education on how to navigate the platform, and we have educational videos posted. There's no doubt in my mind that some sites, some users didn't know to do that, but I think that we provided enough resources to educate folks on. So I'm not sure if it was that they didn't care to use those resources, or they weren't joining the webinars, or whatever their decision was for not that, or if there was even a change in staffing and maybe the new person didn't know of the educational resources. But I also know that some sites chose not to go in and update their errors.
Okay. I would hate to make the assumption that sites chose not to clean up their errors if in actuality is a usability issue, or if you have new data managers out there that aren't familiar with the platform or the actual process of abstracting data. I think we have one.
Yeah, we were able to
out there that is very new, actually. So
We were able to verify what sites those were, and those sites have been contacted that had the large discrepancies, and the ones that I recognized, they were not new data managers.
okay. And then I do have one more question, and I actually just got off the phone with Esteban about this. So I found we did an internal quality check. One of our internal quality checks captured an extubation date that was before an intubation date. And right before the call, I just looked to see if it was one of the logic statements, and it is not included in the list of logic statements. So I don't know if, I mean, I'm guessing there will be a plan to include that logic statement in the next.
That's correct, Kelly. This is Melanie with IQVIA. Esteban actually just escalated up to our group. So we just saw that maybe about 15 minutes ago.
Great.
So yes, we're looking at that to see, you know, to make sure that that is included.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, this is Carolyn. I just want to add, Kelly, it wasn't just the congenital database. We saw the same issues in adult cardiac with sites choosing not to address the errors. And I know the folks have been on, some of the folks that I recognized have been on the webinar, so they were educated and maybe didn't receive the education, or it wasn't in a format that was, you know, their education, their learning style. But it just wasn't congenital. So we updated the severity across all of the databases for those types of logical inconsistencies.
Okay. All right. I just, again, I hate to use the word that sites chose not to fix their errors, if indeed.
I hate using that word too, and I wish it wasn't true.
Yeah. If it's, you can educate and still some people may not understand it. Technology can be complex. So there is a learning curve, especially when you're adding new technology. So thank you though.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Carol and Melanie. So Heidi, I was a few minutes late, sorry, no worries. Was a harvest close date announced? No, ma'am. So a harvest date close has not yet been announced, but I did, you know, obviously mention that we hear the requests from you all and from your surgeons about wanting to see this 2020 results before the spring 2021 harvest is closed. Spring 2021 harvest is closed. So we do not have a date yet. We are working with DCRI and IQVIA on timelines of when that data will be available and back. So once we have more information regarding that, we will obviously share that with you all as soon as we know. So, and as stated, data managers will receive at a very minimum 2 weeks heads up before the harvest close date. I don't think you all have ever had a 2-week notice, but obviously we'll give you as much lead time as possible. So that information will be coming. Let's see here, the low cardiac output complication definition includes an increase in inotropes by 10%. This is a very small amount. Patients may have a transient increase in inotropic support overnight and then have a decrease overnight or the next day. How is this part of the definition ascertained, and is it under review?
I know for a fact it's under review because we talked about it last night on the upgrade call. And I don't know if Chastity or Leslie or Janet want to take this one.
Yes, so as far as the ascertainment of a definition, between cardiac dysfunction resulting in low cardiac output and cardiac failure or severe cardiac dysfunction, it's obviously a continuum, right? You can start out in cardiac dysfunction and go on to have cardiac failure, or you can just remain in the cardiac dysfunction realm. So it's meant to capture obviously 2 different kind of ends of a spectrum. And so while the 10% may be questionable to us, my understanding is that, you know, a lot of surgeons, cardiologists and things weighed in on the definitions for these complications, especially the historic ones. So I don't think that the 10% above baseline upon admission is something that's going to be changed within the definition. However, the definition will be cleaned up where you can now, it will instruct you to code one or both. So I know right now there's a discrepancy with the definition saying only code cardiac dysfunction, or also code cardiac failure if you also have cardiac failure, and then the cardiac failure definition says only code cardiac failure if it meets cardiac failure criteria. So that part is going to be cleaned up. But I think from a surgeon perspective, they like the definition of the low cardiac output state or cardiac dysfunction and feel that that's exactly what they're trying to capture. So it is that 10% above baseline upon admission that they're looking for. And I agree, anytime you go up in your inotropes, you've probably hit that 10%, or at least in my own patient records, I would agree that that is true.
Can I ask a question, Chastity, on that one? So
Sure.
you sometimes, this is Carol, so sometimes you would adjust it just, a little bit up, a little bit down, that kind of thing. But are you looking for a consistently high level that is greater than 10%? And is there a time frame that you would look over to see if there was a 10% increase?
In the current definition, no, but you would have, I mean, it would be unlikely that in my program anyway, that we would increase the inotropes and that we wouldn't be seeing some of the other signs that are mentioned in here. So metabolic acidosis or tachycardia and oliguria, you have other clinical symptoms going on, at the same time.
So this is one part of, just to clarify for the.
Yeah,
for
it doesn't necessarily say that in the definition that you need multiple components of this. It's just saying these are the signs and symptoms of what represent cardiac dysfunction, and inotropes being increased greater than 10% or at 10% or above baseline is one of those indicators. Now, if it remains for 48 consecutive hours at 10% above baseline, now you have cardiac failure. So that's where a time frame does get specified.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
But does that help? I know that these can be definitions that are, I think, a struggle for data managers. And we pointed this out in the upgrade call last evening, that this is definitely a place that data managers do struggle. And I don't know, I think in my own center, we work closely with our intensivists to have them help us capture this. I think cardiac failure is easy to point out. I think cardiac dysfunction is not, and they don't always use the buzzwords that I want them to use so that I feel like we're meeting those, those parameters. And so we definitely have worked with our intensivist team to, help us when a patient is in a low cardiac output state. Please, document it, chart it, whatever. And so that's
definitely a tricky one, the low cardiac, the dysfunction. Failure is pretty straightforward, but dysfunction is really difficult to capture.
It is.
Yeah.
And also, as we are, continuing to work through this upgrade, the core group will be working very much with the new training manual. If there are any specific definitions that any of the data managers would like to see improved, further clarification on, if you have comments or suggestions, please just send those to me via email, and I can work with Carol and Chastity, Leslie, Janet, Ruthie, the entire core group members, so we can make sure we focus on those and make sure those are addressed. So again, please just send those, email those directly to me, and I can continue to make the list and make sure that we address all of those specifically, ones that you all have identified. Let's see here. For new data manager, I'm confused about the idea of a site choosing not to fix errors. What is this referring to?
Sure, I can take that one, Leanne.
Yep.
So on the IQVIA platform, when you upload data, you get different things on the file that you uploaded. Critical error will prevent that record from going in. Error is a high level warning that says that something is not working, something is not correct within the data, and you really need to go in and check it out. It's not preventing the record from going in, but it really needs to be fixed. Those previously were things like logical errors. So if you had your date of surgery before your birth date, that would be a logical error. And before we just had those listed as errors, we were expecting and educated sites to go in and fix those errors. However, it could even just be simple as a typo where you typed 1921 instead of 2021. And some sites decided that they were not going to fix those errors. So they just uploaded their data and didn't go back and update the records within the ones that had errors. They didn't go back and update them within their vendor software and re-uploaded the corrected data to IQVIA. So that's where those deciding not to fix errors came from. And we have a lot of educational resources provided both within these webinars that IQVIA, that we've been having 3 times a month for everybody, where we have, today we have 70 people on. We've had probably close to 80 on each call since October of 2019. And then we also have a lot of resources posted on the STS website under Data Manager Education. So, and this isn't unusual. This isn't isolated just to the transition to IQVIA. The same thing happened with when we were with DCRI. However, when we were with DCRI, DCRI would go in and change your data to null if there was a logical error in that field. You would get notified on your DQR that there was a discrepancy within your data. DCRI changed these values to null and you needed to go in and fix it. IQVIA doesn't change data, so they send these errors and you're expected to go in and fix it. Since sites were not doing that, we've escalated these errors to now be critical errors, which will prevent that record from going in until you correct the logical discrepancy. So that's what it is referring to.
Thank you, Carol. I thought I saw someone had a hand raised. Okay. Let's see.
I can take my McCall's question.
Okay. Oh, okay. There you go. Go ahead.
Sure. So McCall's asking if they could if you all could receive an update on the status of where the last harvest file is at, what the process is and all of that. So when the data comes in from you all and we we have a harvest deadline, which occurs. IQVIA takes a snapshot of that data. Language for the first transition, and this won't happen with subsequent harvests, but for this harvest, because it's the first one where the data exchange is going to occur, there has to be code that's written between IQVIA and DCRI to get the data over to DCRI, and then there's code written between IQVIA and DCRI from DCRI to IQVIA for IQVIA to accept that code back. So that's the step we're at right now. The data is planned to go over to DCRI, I think by the end of the week, or I believe by the end of the week. So they're pretty confident that the code is working correctly. We've been on lots of calls between IQVIA and DCRI with the specifications going back and forth about the logic and what's expected and how it's expected to come back over to DCRI. Then DCRI will analyze the data. So we're expecting the data to go to DCRI by the end of the week.
Carol,
Yep.
it's Melanie. Just want to clarify. So the transfer is scheduled for March the 1st. So that's Monday.
Sorry. So March 1st. I was close.
You were close.
So by Monday, is that Monday, I think?
Yeah.
I was
Yes,
going to say
that's
by
a
the
Monday.
end of the week or early next week. I knew it was right around the weekend.
Yep. We go through our code deployment and everything is happening this weekend for the IQVIA side, and the delivery is scheduled for Monday.
Great. So IQVIA will send that data over to DCRI on Monday. DCRI validates when they receive that file back. They validate the forms, how they're receiving it back. It's a lot of data. There's a lot of different checks that have to be code that has to be written to accept it in properly, and then it goes in. It goes into the analytics at DCRI, which I think can take between 6 to 8 weeks, which is typical. That's what it's normally taking, what it has taken in the future. And then DCRI will package the data up. We've been working not just on the code to get it over to DCRI, but to for IQVIA to receive it back from DCRI. So that's a whole separate process. And once these processes are established, there should just be, if there's any tweaks, they'll just be minor tweaks in subsequent harvests. But this is the first one, so it takes a little bit longer. And then DCRI will send that data to IQVIA. IQVIA runs some initial checks on it to make sure that they're receiving what they're expecting and that it's in the format that they're expecting it in. And then that's how that process works. So right now, the step that we're at is we're expecting that data to be sent over to DCRI and for DCRI to accept the data the beginning of next week. Do you have anything to add, Melanie, or the IQVIA team?
You got it.
Thank God.
That's the process.
I've been paying attention on those calls.
That was very
A
impressive.
lot of information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope
That
that's
was-
helpful. I know in the future, we expect it to be a much quicker
Yes.
process.
Yes, this is the first time, and that's what you had
yeah.
indicated. It is the first time, so therefore there's just a lot more processing in regards to just the alignment that's needed between DCRI and IQVIA to
And
get
then-
that first data set out.
Great. And then the other side is that we have simultaneously in that process of aligning codes with between IQVIA and DCRI, STS and the IQVIA team are, along with some core group members, are building the analyzed or benchmarked dashboard that data gets sucked back up into or plugged into when it comes back from DCRI. So, DCRI does analysis, they do the analytic side, risk adjustment and all that. IQVIA is responsible for some of the other benchmarked outcomes, and that includes a lot of programming on their end to make sure they're doing calculations correctly and verifying what's expected, visualization, and all of that with core group members, surgeon leaders, and STS. So we have two different processes going on to get to the same end point, which is the publication of the benchmarked report. So there's a lot of work going on, and I think we'll keep you all updated as we move forward.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
For Ren, can you please edit cardiac dysfunction to 10% above baseline at admission to ICU post-operatively, purely for clarity's sake regarding patients that were admitted to the ICU preoperatively?
This is Chastity. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that what they mean is a post-op admission, not what was, if you happen to be in the ICU preoperatively and then came back, that they're not comparing your baseline to the previous time spent in the hospital, but your post-op baseline. So I think that we can definitely recommend that.
Absolutely. All right. Will we get an email from IQVIA regarding the January harvest data once the results are complete, or is there another form of notification?
Yeah, we do. We'll have a party, and we'll notify you all. We'll keep you up to date on the webinars and the user group calls, and then just the same as we've done with the other bases when those reports. So once the data comes back from DCRI and it's successfully plugged in, and STS does a walkthrough, making sure that we do a testing, internal testing in STS for the UAT, and then which is user acceptance testing. And then we open user acceptance testing up to core group members who have signed on, others that have asked to participate in that, and some of the surgeons that have asked to participate on that. They go through and check to make sure their data is looking right. And if we're not, if for some reason we accidentally missed reporting something, they'll let us know. And IQVIA has been really great in both adult cardiac and general thoracic about making those updates almost in real time for in that UAT environment. That process usually lasts about a week to 2 weeks. So once we get through all of that, just because we want to give everybody enough time to review it, and we don't want to open it up to the masses, to the public, to you all on the to the production environment without having it thoroughly reviewed on all levels. So once we get to that point and surgeon leaders are comfortable, core groups comfortable, we open it up to publication, which then will be available for all the sites, and we send out emails letting everybody know, and it will announce it on the webinars.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, from Maggie, this is a little bit of a long one. My surgeons struggle with the definition of low cardiac output complication. Feel that there is much that happens in the immediate post-stop period that is to be expected, especially the need for a bump in the inotropes for a few hours, or metabolic acidosis, elevated lactic acid coming out of the OR. Also, they are very particular about what drugs should be considered inotropes. I think it would be super helpful to have a more specific definition that includes listing the drugs that should be considered for inotropes, a minimum amount of time that the symptoms of low cardiac output must be present, including the length of time that the inotrope level has been increased, or how many hours of low urine output should be present before assigning the low cardiac output syndrome complication. Also, with infants, they are tachycardic at baseline. How much of an increased heart rate and for what period of time should be considered? Since my surgeons get frustrated when a child has a few hours of increased drug usage or low urine output the first evening after surgery, and then are fine and essentially baseline by morning. So,
Hey, Leanne, it's Leslie. I think this is one that I know Chastity and I have talked a lot about and want to really put some clarifications in there. So I think these are all great suggestions that we can save for the when we get to the training manual and the intents and clarifications.
absolutely. Great, and thank you for putting that in here, Maggie. So I will have a copy of this, everything that goes into the Q&A, so I can add that to my list and have that for us, for the core group, for the training manual. And again, if you all have any other suggestions, if you think of something after this call, again, just please feel free to email them to me. My email is ljones@sts.org. So there's my contact information. Okay, I'm not seeing any additional questions. Okay, Brooke. So Brooke. Okay, I'm gonna have a struggle saying that word. Is I can't even pronounce it. I'm not even gonna attempt.
Milrinone.
Thank you. See, Joe, you're not the only one that struggles with these pronunciations. So
Thank you.
you're not alone. We looked at it all in the cardiac failure complication as far as being captured in the same way as epinephrine. I got that one. Milrinone, I think that's, I don't know, can be a slow wean and you hit that 48-hour mark easily, and they go in the same cardiac failure as a patient who needs bumps in epinephrine. So got it. Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. All right. Does anyone from the STS or IQVIA side have anything that they would like to add as we wait just a couple of seconds to see if anything else comes in? Going once, going twice. Again, just a reminder, for those that may have joined the call a little late, we are going to our two database calls a month, where we'll have our monthly webinar and our user group call each month. We were having the 2 user group calls due to the transition, but we're going to back that down. And just as to be consistent with the other databases, again, we'll have our monthly webinar and our user group call. If you have any suggestions or anything you would like to see in terms of education on our monthly webinars, please feel free to share those ideas with me, so I could work with core group, surgeon leaders, some of your colleagues who may have an idea of something they would be interested in presenting on the monthly webinars, any QI projects that you have going on at your facility, something that you'd be interested in sharing, please, again, feel free to reach out and let me know. We're happy to work with you on that. Send those ideas to me via email. And Liz wanted to know, could a VIS score be incorporated into the definition of low cardiac output? So we will take that back. Thank you, Liz. Since I am not seeing any additional questions or concerns. Anyone else? Carol, anybody have anything to add? All right. Thank you all for joining today and taking the time to join. We appreciate you all and your time and everything you do for the congenital database. Thank you all. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you to my IQVIA colleagues, STS colleagues, core group members. Thank you all very much. And I hope you all have a great week, and we will chat with you on March the 16th for our monthly webinar. I hope you all have a great day, okay? Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody, so much. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you,
Thanks,
Leslie,
everyone.
Chastity, and Janet. Thank you all so much.
Thank
And
you.
our IQVIA team.
Yes.